What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so I've got some very wild news. Look, I'm gonna just jump right into it, y'all. Look, check this out. Trump says he wants to permanently pause migration to the U.S. from poorer countries, so basically third world nations. Yeah, Donald Trump went on a freaking rant after this guy and this Afghani national that should not be in the country, to be honest with you, shot those two National Guard members. Donald Trump has been on a rampage about that. And look, I agree with him on most of this. He basically wants to put a moratorium on migration from third world nations. And I totally get that. Look, these countries, we have allowed way too many of these people to come into the country. He's having a tough time getting these people out, the people that have come in illegally. And it's just making the job even tougher, still bringing these people in through the legal process. So he was like, well, hang on, we're going to reset, basically, is what we're going to do here. Let's get into this because this is a fascinating news article right here. Check this out, y'all. President Donald Trump says he wants to permanently pause migration from poorer nations and is promising to seek to expel millions of immigrants from the United States by revoking their legal status. Now, he has absolutely been on a tear doing this. He's already revoked the legal status for Somalis, Venezuelans, several different other countries, right? Like, there's been a bunch from Haiti, from all kinds of other nations, like to the tune of hundreds of thousands. He's revoked their temporary protected status. All these asylees that were allowed to come into the country by Joe Biden. Not anymore, folks. Donald Trump has been revoking that. He is blaming immigrants for problems from crime to housing shortages as part of social dysfunction in America and demanding reverse migration. Now, I'm not sure exactly what he means by reverse migration. He wants people to move out of the country, because that's what it sounds like to me, is American citizens moving away. I'm sure that's not what he means, but basically he wants the people that have come in under Biden, he wants to get all those people out, essentially, and reset this nation back to where it was during the first Trump administration. And look, I get that. You know, there are a lot of problems that are brought by flooding the country with migrants, right? And most of these people, they're not even classified as migrants, at least as far as I'm concerned, because if you are willing to sneak into a country, fly under the radar, in between ports of entry, you are not up to any good for that country, right? That's what I believe, right? Because people, good law-abiding people, we'll even say it like that, law-abiding people don't go around and intentionally break the laws, right? Like, sure, look, I get it. You might go and you might speed a little bit, right? But once you notice you're speeding, you generally slow down. You might go 5 miles over, but that's generally a giveaway, if you will. We all kind of understand this, that cops generally won't pull you over if you're going a little bit over the speed limit. So, you know, technically it's breaking the laws, but not really, because laws are only as good as the people who are willing to enforce them, essentially. And if you're not willing to enforce federal immigration laws, then you get what we had under Joe Biden, essentially, people flooding into this nation. But it went much further than that. Joe Biden didn't just not enforce immigration laws. They perverted the laws that are on the books to allow some of these people to come in, quote unquote, legally. And Donald Trump is trying to reverse most of that, right? Like, they took the asylum parole process and gave that to everybody, right? Everybody was an asylum seeker, right? They dramatically expanded the categorization for asylum, right? They dramatically expanded that, so just about everybody could claim asylum and get asylum under the Biden administration. And that's a problem, folks, because those people aren't vetted. Most of those people aren't vetted. That's why we've seen a spike in alien criminality in this country. But let's keep going. His most severe social media post against immigration since returning to the Oval Office in January came after the shooting Wednesday of 2 National Guard members who were patrolling the streets of the nation's capital under his orders. One died and the other is in critical condition. Now, Donald Trump isn't really railing against immigration here, right? This is something that the media always does. They always say, oh, it's immigration. But you're going to see here in a minute that they know the difference between migration and illegal migration, as a matter of fact. So when they say, Donald Trump's most severe social media post against immigration, hang on just a second. We know what they're trying to elude, right? They're trying to elucidate right here that, Donald Trump doesn't want people to come into the country legally. Well, that's just not true. Now, sure, this social media post said he doesn't want people to come from third world nations. And look, I get that. But what he's basically saying here, and we know Donald Trump is not the most articulate man when it comes to situations of immigration or just about anything, right? He says stuff bull in a china shop style, and hey, we love him for it, right? But anyway, so basically, Donald Trump just doesn't want these people coming that are just anybody and everybody. He wants good people coming to this country that want to assimilate into the country, right? Because these people that are coming, these refugees and asylum seekers and all this, they're coming into this country. They are being plopped down in a town somewhere in rural Ohio or something like that, and they create their own enclaves, right? Which is an entire different country within our country. Well, they live by different rules. We just got through covering a news article the other day where in Texas, Muslims were creating Sharia courts to enforce their own laws, to enforce Sharia law, basically. Like, no, you can't do that. That is completely antithetical to our criminal justice system in this country. And we have got to nip this in the bud, folks. They're going to destroy this country from the inside out, as a matter of fact. A 29-year-old Afghan national who worked with the CIA during the Afghanistan war is facing charges. The suspect came to the U.S. as part of a program to resettle those who had helped American troops after U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Trump's threat to stop immigration would be a serious blow to a nation that has long defined itself as welcoming immigrants. See, and there they go once again, folks, saying, Donald Trump doesn't want immigration to this country. That is absolutely not true. That is fake news. That is the mainstream corporate press trying to lie to you. Once again, the narrative always is Republicans are evil and Democrats are angels. That's what they're trying to do here, because most Americans agree that, yes, we are a country of immigrants. As a matter of fact, we've had mass amounts of migrants come into this country over the years, and we still allow a lot, right? But we've had more in the past. But that's legal migration. That is not illegal migration. I just can't stand that, because it's basically a lie. It really is, because Donald Trump wants to stop illegal migration, and they say, Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Those are two different things. Those are very different things. Since the shooting, not far from the White House, administration officials have pledged to re-examine millions of legal immigrants, building on a 10-month campaign to reduce the immigrant population. In a lengthy social media post late Thursday, the Republican president asserted that millions of people born outside the U.S. and now living in the country bore a large share of the blame for America's societal ills. Right, once again, folks, sure, you could say that. There are a lot of criminal aliens getting arrested right now in this country that are actually committing crimes. A lot of our crime comes from criminal aliens. But once again, they are not delineating between those two things. All right, and they're gonna cite a study that says, migrants commit less crimes than American citizens, which that is it's a flawed study, by the way, because they don't differentiate between criminal aliens and regular migrants. They don't delineate between, people that become citizens, temporary workers. They don't delineate between none of that. Just if you're foreign born, there you go. They put them people into a category and that's it. But if you actually count, the fact that criminal aliens break the law to enter the country, then those numbers are very, very skewed in the opposite direction, because then almost all of your migrants are actually criminals. Only reverse migration can fully cure this situation, Trump posted on his Truth Social platform. Other than that, happy Thanksgiving to all except those that hate, steal, murder, and destroy everything that America stands for. You won't be here for long. Yes, that's great. This is one reason we love Donald Trump, because he is willing to say the things that need to be said at a time when it's not so popular to say them. Trump was elected on a promise to crack down on illegal migration. You see what I mean by that? They know the difference between migration and illegal migration. So the fact every time that they conflate the two, they are trying to manipulate you into thinking that Donald Trump is an evil guy. And raids and deportations. Oh, let me start that over. Trump was elected on a promise to crack down on illegal migration, and raids and deportations undertaken by his administration have disrupted communities across the country. Yes, illegal migrant communities or criminal alien communities, not regular communities. You know, the only people that are actually complaining about this is the people that want the criminal aliens to be here. People that don't care about our federal laws, that don't care about the sovereignty of this nation. People that would love to see this nation fall. I mean, unless it just totally got perverted to their way of thinking, to their ideology, which, by the way, their ideology is not anything that's solid. Their ideology is amorphous. It's constantly changing. Whatever flavor of the week that they feel. Like this week, it could be, no humans are illegal. And next week, it's, trans women are women type of stuff. It's insane, y'all. Construction sites and schools have been frequent targets. The prospect of more deportations could be economically dangerous, as America's foreign-born workers account for nearly 31 million jobs according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yes, and once again, Donald Trump is not going to be able to get rid of all those people. Plus, not all foreign-born workers are targets of the Trump administration for immigration enforcement. Yeah, they are only going after the illegal migrants. These people are scumbags, y'all. They really are. They conflate all kinds of different stuff. They said America's foreign-born workers account for 31% or 31 million jobs. Yeah, and you know what? The vast majority of those people have some sort of a visa or green card or something like that. It's insane, y'all. The president said on Truth Social that most foreign-born U.S. residents are on welfare from failed nations or from prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels, as he blamed them for crime across the country that is predominantly committed by U.S. citizens. See where they're going? They're trying to say, the crime is committed predominantly by U.S. citizens. Yeah, because there's 40 million U.S. citizens and only maybe 25 to 30 million criminal aliens in this country. So sure, yeah, predominantly that's going to be committed by U.S. citizens, because there's 10 times the amount. There's an order of magnitude more U.S. citizens than there are criminal aliens. That's what I mean by manipulation, folks. These people are not scared to manipulate the crap out of anything and everything, y'all. It's truly insane. There are roughly 50 million foreign-born residents in the U.S., and multiple studies have found that immigrants are generally less likely to commit crimes than are people who are born in the country. Yeah, and once again, those are flawed studies, because, once again, they lump in criminal aliens into this process, and they don't account for the fact that these criminal aliens, all of them committed a crime by entering the country illegally. Right? If you actually add that in, then foreign-born people are far more likely to commit any sort of a crime, right? But once again, you also take that number, they don't do it per capita or whatever either. They just count basic stats here. That's like saying that, New York's crime is way more than some rural town in Louisiana. Well, yeah, because there's only like 10,000 residents in that town. as compared to, 14 million? Or Manhattan has like 7 million. New York, the greater area, has like 14 million people. Of course, crime is going to be much higher over there. Yeah, when you count the numbers like that, sure. It's ridiculous, y'all. It's all manipulation. All of it. The perception that immigration breeds crime continues to falter under the weight of the evidence, according to a review of academic literature last year in the Annual Review of Criminology. Yeah, lies, folks. It's all manipulated. With few exceptions, studies conducted at both the aggregate and individual levels demonstrate that high concentrations of immigrants are not associated with increased levels of crime and delinquency across neighborhoods and cities in the United States, it said. Yes, once again, because they are not counting it per capita on this stuff. If you do it per capita, those numbers are vastly different. You will find that they are about the same. About the same, folks. American citizens commit just as much crime as foreign-born citizens or foreign-born individuals in general. And also, if you exclude the fact that criminal aliens committed a crime by entering the country, if you exclude that, it's about the same when you actually go deep into the numbers, when you go down to the granular, in other words. It's about the same. It's insane what they try to do with those. But they always try to manipulate those numbers. Always. Trump seemed to have little interest in a policy debate in his post, which the White House, on its own rapid response social media account, called one of the most important messages ever released by President Trump. He pledged to terminate millions of admissions to the country made during the term of his predecessor, Democrat Joe Biden. He also wants to end the federal benefits and subsidies for those who are not U.S. citizens, denaturalize people who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport foreign nationals deemed non-compatible with Western civilization. Yes, I totally agree with that as well. Because if you are not willing to assimilate into this country, assimilate into this culture, you only sow seeds of division in this country. Plus, we allow way too many foreign nationals in other countries to get social media accounts to influence our own politics. As we saw on X, they just implemented a new little tool that shows the nation as to where the account comes from. And most of the accounts that claimed to be Americans and were very prominent on social media that we thought were American accounts were not American accounts. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of Native American accounts came from, I forget what country it is right off the top of my head, but Tim Pool did a pretty good breakdown on this. Go check it out. It's enlightening to say the least. Trump claimed immigrants from Somalia were completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota as he used a dated slur for intellectually disabled people to demean the state's governor. Tim Walz, the Democratic vice presidential nominee last year. That's funny. Yeah. He's an idiot, basically. On Wednesday night, Trump called for the reinvestigation of all Afghan refugees who had entered under the Biden administration. On Thursday, the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Joseph Edlow, said the agency would take additional steps to screen people from 19 high-risk countries to the maximum degree possible. Yes, do all of it. He basically called Tim Walz a retard. There you go. Basically called him a retard because he kind of is. I mean, I'm sorry, look, if you stand up and advocate against your own country, for crying out loud, because that's what Tim Walz did. That's what Kamala Harris was doing. They advocate against our laws. They want open borders. They think men can be women and all this other nonsense. That is not very smart. That is not very intellectual, to be honest with you. You are trying to deny science. You're denying all kinds of nonsense. But look, Trump may be taking this a little bit far, but once again, that's a good thing right now, because what we had under the Biden administration was the complete inversion of what Donald Trump is trying to do right now. He allowed just a flood of immigrants into this country, folks. Once again, I cannot overstate it enough. 15 million criminal aliens. Once again, that is not to count the 4 million or 1 million we take in per year just generally legally, and then the 3 to 5 million, folks, that's 25 million. Almost, right? It's just about 25 million. That's a large portion of our population. It's a lot of people in the country that we have no idea who they are. Absolutely. And I think a lot of them need to go. Most of them need to go. And we need to start over. And that's what Donald Trump wants to do. And I'm right there behind it. Behind all of it, y'all. But I think that's all I got on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Don't forget, smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click the join button, sign up, and become a member. It's the best way to help this channel expand and grow. But it's the end of the video, so you guys remember one thing. God has a plan for everybody. He loves each and every one of you out there. So y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.